Is war easier than civilian life? Now, right away, you and I are just like, of course, civilian life is easier and better than being in active combat. But somebody who's actually been through active combat, sometimes they have a different view of it all. And this is very interesting what we're about to hear from Mike Glover. This is episode 1931, Mike Glover, Joe Rogan Experience. We're at 19 minutes, 52 seconds. Very interesting insight into being in combat, being a Green Beret, like serving the way that Mike Glover served, versus him having to go into civilian life and the way that he actually looks at it. It's so interesting, and it's really making me rethink how I view tribes. Because in past videos, I've talked about the negatives of the tribe. And in this video, we're going to be touching on the positives of a tribe. So stick with me. Coach Colin, coolest high performance coach in the world. And if you want the absolute best insights to the podcasts and videos you love, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it.
Like, I have buddies who answer the questionnaire who don't have PTSD. I don't think I have PTSD. Do I have transitional issues? Certainly. I serve, the analogy is like a dog. If a dog in the military serves for 20 years, and then you take that dog who's used to biting people's asses, sniffing out bombs, getting blown up in combat, training as a protocol, and then you transition them to the living room, and it's your house pet, that shit's not going to work. There's going to be a transitional period. Give me a buffer. Give me some time to kind of unscrew my systems, get back to a normal protocol that's civilian life, and then question me. But they're questioning these guys right after they get out, and of course they're going to be fucked up. Of course they're going to be all screwed up. And legitimately, some guys have PTSD. They've been blown up in the one moment, but most of the guys that I know, Jack Hart, Tim Kennedy, all these guys that I serve with at pretty high levels, we don't have PTSD. We profoundly enjoyed our experience. There's nothing traumatic. I'm not shivering underneath my blanket, worried, concerned about war. I'm actually more having nightmares about missing out on those kind of efforts with guys that I serve with who are, certainly still serving.
That's such an interesting perspective for people who haven't served, the idea that you feel like you're missing out on it. And I appreciate your honesty, saying that it was fun, or saying that it's easier than civilian life.
Yeah, it's the first thing. Like, I transitioned out of the military in a contractor with a Central Intelligence Agency, and it was a smack in the face because, call it a brotherhood, call it tribe, call it whatever you want. I had a great run with amazing human beings. What I noticed when I went from the military to waking up in an air mattress in an apartment in San Antonio is civilian life sucks. Where do you go for connectivity, for tribe? If you don't belong to a dojo, if you don't belong to a gym, if you don't go to a church, then you don't have that feeling of purpose and that feeling of community. So I went from a place where my family were the teammates that I served with and transitioned into civilian life where everybody's worried about their own game. They're very selfish. I mean, for the first time, likely in the history of our country, you don't know your neighbors. You don't know who's in the apartment next door to you. You're escaping trying to even interact with those people, and it's fucking depressing. So I thought the military experience for me was easy. And a lot of guys who come back and have to deal with bills, relationships, all the shit that civilians deal with, that's hard. And that's the difficulty. It's not necessarily a traumatic experience in one moment in time that took place that is the PTSD. It's like getting kicked in the dick every day being a civilian when you didn't have to before because you have everything, at your fingertips. That would give you PTSD if you didn't have it.
Have you ever read Sebastian Junger's book, Tribe?
Great book.
Yeah.
Great sum up of the experience. I wish there was more context. Like, he needs to put out more on it. But, he went out to Restrepo in Afghanistan and experienced that at a very high level. And then even in his own reflection, leaving that, he was like, man, I'm missing something. And, societally, I think profoundly likely a lot of the issues we're dealing with, depression, suicide, drug overdoses at a record high, are caused because of that lack of purpose, that lack of tribe. And maybe in a way, all the guys like myself, Evan Hafer, we're all trying to pick up our own tribes in our own way. I mean, that's certainly why I started my company.
No, I think there's definitely something to that, and there definitely seems to be this thing that happens to a lot of guys when they get out of the military. It happens to a lot of guys who do anything where you have a tight-knit group of people that are like-minded, that are trying to do the same thing. You see with fighters too, where they retire from fighting and then they're not in the gym anymore, they're not training with guys anymore, they're not like, you're not traveling together all the time and supporting each other, and they lose themselves, and many of them start drinking, they get into drugs, they need something to try to either soothe themselves or give themselves some sort of a feeling, because the feelings that you have when you're training and fighting, I would imagine it's even far more extreme if you're in the military and then you're overseas and you're with these people and you have this intense bond, and then all of a sudden it goes away. Now you have none. Now you have no bond, and now you're doing a job that's not interesting at all. You're just getting paid. You're bored as fuck. You're watching TV. You're drinking beer, and you're like, what am I doing? Like, what is life?
Yeah, there's that many jobs that translate from a military experience, period. I mean, what are you going to be, a fucking cop? I mean,
What are you going to be, a fucking cop? And just so you know, I stopped the clip there, but what he means by that is there's no comparison between active combat and being a police officer after you've been through the combat and everything like that, because the worst of the worst for police is very bad, and it needs to be commended and admired and appreciated by us civilians. But a lot of their day is like speeding tickets and paperwork and like just stuff that doesn't interest a guy like Mike Glover. So he's not shitting on cops. He's just like, in comparison to what he's been through, it's like there's just no comparison for him, right? But this is amazing to really hear, because like I keep connecting the tribe to what happens when, like, let's say your family's very negative and you have to break free in order to pursue the things that you've always wanted to do. I always talk about that, and it's important, and it still is. But hearing this version of the tribe being a bunch of guys who really do support each other, who are all high level, who are all like-minded, pursuing the same goal, they're great guys. And then to get taken away from that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense why you would miss that so much, even if it is in active combat, maybe even more so, because these guys, it's life and death. Like they talk about Sebastian and his book Tribe. Check it out. Very interesting book. But one thing that Sebastian said, and I believe he even said it on this podcast, he was talking about how you know who has your back when you're in that situation, when you're in combat. You understand that this guy next to you will die for you and you will die for him. And then he talked about how in civilian life, you're not really sure of that. Like you and I could meet, we could become friends for a couple years, but we're still not 100% sure that we would die for each other. Like, whereas these guys, it's like, that's the baseline. Of course, if your legs get blown off, I'm going to carry you. Of course, I'm not going to leave you behind. Of course, if you get shot, I'm going to remedy that shot. I'm not going to run. I'm always going to be there for you. Of course. How many people in your life can you really say that about when you're in civilian life? If you have a brother, sister, family, you would hope that they would do that. And you feel like they would because you've known them forever. But it's like beyond that, you don't fully know. And obviously you have amazing friends. You have best friends. They would do that, so we think. But that never gets tested in civilian life. Whereas in active combat, it gets tested. And relationships, whether it's intimate relationships or friends, when they get tested, it feels better on the other side of that. Because we've been through XYZ and we're still here for each other. We still love each other. We haven't walked away from each other. And I guess it's just like an everyday, especially active combat, when you like go on tour like Mike has, it gets tested every single day. And every single day it shines through. And then to be in civilian life, it's like, I guess you would feel really alone. And what that makes me really think of when we apply it to like our lives is how many guys are missing that, are missing those deep relationships that get tested and are life and death relationships. Like how many guys do you see who are sad, depressed, feeling listless, aimless? Like maybe that's why. And I'm not going to say that they need something like active combat, but obviously some guys do. Like Mike Glover did. He had fun there. Jocko talks about the same thing, having a lot of fun there. Tim Kennedy said on Jocko's podcast, he actually said the sentence, we wanted war so bad. Like some guys need it. And it makes me wonder how many people who are living the civilian life right now need that, not that experience, not that traumatic experience, but need deep relationships that get tested on a daily basis, get tested hardcore. Not just friends, not just let me buy you a drink, you buy me a drink, but they need some deep, deep relationships. Like maybe that's why so many guys are depressed. I work with, in terms of coaching, like I've talked to a lot of guys over time, and like a lot of them, maybe that's what they're missing. Tribe. I always connect it, especially ongoing making these videos. I've connected it a lot of times to negativity, but there's a lot of positivity there. And I guess there's a lot of purpose there. There's a lot of aim. We're all aiming together. And then there's the sense that you're actually needed. It's wild to think that there's so many of us living this civilian life, and it takes somebody coming from active combat, life and death situation to come and live in this life and be like, wow, this is hard. And we don't realize it. We don't realize how hard it is. But it is really hard. Like there are some and obviously there's no life and death stuff. I mean, it's like it's Twinkies and Uber Eats and chilling and laughing and watching whatever you want on YouTube. It's comfortable, but it's still hard. Because at the end of the day, when you're immersed in comfort, life gets hard because your baseline of resilience becomes lower and lower and lower. It's really something to think about. Like, I know most of you are civilians watching. And have you ever thought about why you might, like, for those of you that feel like aimless, depressed, no direction, just shitty, don't feel like there's much purpose in your life. Like, you ever wonder why you feel like that? Like maybe it is because, like he named off, you're not a part of a church, you're not a part of a dojo, you're not a part of a mosque, you don't have that real unifying thing that you get to lean on and that you get to stand up for every single day. It really does make you think. Like such an interesting insight. I'm telling you, Mike Glover, he's not just a guy who's randomly on Joe Rogan right now. He has a lot of content. He has his own podcast. I believe it's called the Black Rifle Podcast because he runs the company, Black Rifle Coffee. He's been putting out content for years. So if you like the kind of vibe that he has, link in the description to his YouTube channel, link in the description to the full podcast that's on Spotify with him and Joe Rogan. Yeah, just real interesting guy. Real interesting guy. If you like Jocko, if you like Tim Kennedy, you're going to like Mike Glover. He is an absolute badass. But I'm out. Peace.